Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Encompas Mental Health and Communication series. I am Louise Hansen, and on behalf of the Encompas team, it is my pleasure to introduce Julie Christiansen today. Before we begin, I just wanted to address a couple of housekeeping points. Hi, Julie, welcome. I just wanted to address a couple of housekeeping points. We have purposely disabled cameras and microphones so that everyone can participate anonymously. We are recording the presentation and we do host it on the Encompas site to enable access for those who may have missed it today or those of you who wish to go back and re-watch it. We will be taking questions at the end, so please submit any questions or comments through the Q&A feature. The questions will only come to this panel, again, to protect anonymity. And I will read the questions out at the end of Julie's presentation. I just say that in addition to any questions or comments, if as you listen, you're appreciating what Julie is saying and it resonates with you, please feel free just to type AAAA for awesome into the Q&A session, and we'll share that with Julie as well. Or OOOO for standing ovations, whatever resonates with you. And so now it's my pleasure to introduce Julie Christiansen. Julie is an award-winning international public speaker, author, and psychotherapist. Julie developed the Anger Solutions method of anger resolution, and she's authored several books about anger, stress, bullying, and coping with crisis. Known as the Anger Lady, that's hard to believe, Julie. She has appeared as an expert for various print, radio, and television media outlets. And over the course of her career, she's worked with National Defense, Land Force Area Headquarters, the RCMP, municipal police, correctional officers, and military veterans. Her varied practice includes working with offenders as well as victims of crime. Her work in anger solutions, coupled with her work in academia, has landed her on the list of the 40 most influential forensic psychologists. Julie has been married to her soulmate, Stephen, for more than 30 years, and they reside in the Niagara region of Ontario, Canada. So we are really thrilled to have Julie here today to talk with us about anger solutions for first responders. And this presentation explores the typical challenges faced by first responders and the rationale for a course that deals specifically with anger. Julie will discuss the common misconceptions about anger and the key principles that serve as the foundation for the Anger Solutions program, which we are really thrilled to have and really honored to have featured on our Encompas portal. And lastly, Julie will review the unique approach to first responder emotional states and provide an overview of the Anger Solutions course, its features, and its format. And so you'll be provided really with a taste of what that course offers. And then at the end, as I mentioned, Julie is open to taking questions that you submit through the Q&A. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Julie. Welcome. Thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much. Can everybody, if everyone can hear me okay, if you could just give me a thumbs up with your icons or some such, just to let me know that you can hear me fine.
I hear you well, thank you. And I apologize for not turning on my video myself earlier.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Louise, and to Jen Welsh as well, and the Encompas team for inviting me to be a part of this presentation today. I'm really honored to be here and excited to share with you the Anger Solutions program as it has been adapted and developed for first responders. I'll give you a little bit of background history as I get ready to share my screen here. So I started developing the Anger Solutions program back in the 90s, actually, when I was working in a mental health institution. It was a residential mental health, and there was a whole lot of stuff going on that was, sorry, let me see if I can get back to my first slide here. There was a whole lot of stuff going on in the organization, and tempers were high, let's just say. And there was an incident that led the administration to say, we need to do something about this. And when I got looking around for resources, there weren't any. There was one book The Dance of Anger by Harriet Lerner. And then that was it. That was pretty much all there was at the time. And so I kind of found myself on a mission to research this really misunderstood emotion and to find some tools that would help our clients to function better on the daily within that residential setting. But then I also found that as I continued to work in the material and to develop strategies and that sort of thing, I found that they were easily transferable to other populations. And thus the Anger Solutions program was born after about 4 years of fiddling around with it and trying it out with different client types, you know, moms with kids and kids that have behavior dysregulation and first responders and people with mental health disorders and people that were mandated to anger management, all these different types of groups. It seemed to keep working. So I was like, this is cool. Let's see what we can do with this and maybe formalize the program somehow. So that's kind of how it was born. But when we look at this in the light of first responders, particularly, there are some unique issues that first responders are facing that perhaps people in general population are not going to experience, at least not to the same degree. So of course you have your occupational stressors. These are the things that are just, you know, occupational hazard, if you will, the stuff that comes with the job, right? There are the calls that you have to go out on, the gear that you have to carry, you know, the literal weight that you put on every day in terms of your uniform and your protective gear. There are the organizational stressors, the reports, the oversight, the paperwork that has to be submitted for every incident that is reported. There are challenges within every organization in terms of, you know, what's the word that I'm looking for? Sorry, guys, give me a second. I hate that when I get stuck on a word. It's sort of like the personality challenges, right? When you have a lot of different personalities working together, sometimes there's conflict, and sometimes that conflict is lateral, and sometimes that conflict is vertical. And then we have the public stressors, the optics of things when people don't really understand what's happening on the ground, and they take to social media or they take to, you know, mass media, and they perpetrate ideas that are not reflective of what's really happening on scene or in the lives of police officers from day to day. There's direct trauma, and we call this occupational stress injury in the first responder world, or at least WSIB calls it that. And so your OSIs could be anything from, you know, from arriving on scene and someone is vital signs absent, or a motor vehicle accident where there's, you know, multiple traumas happening at once and you're first on scene. There are lots of things like that that will impact the way you do your job and your emotional state as you do your job. And then of course there's vicarious trauma, right? So civilian members, as well as family members and friends, might experience vicarious trauma just from watching first responders go through what they've been through, right? Watching things on the news. Many people across the globe suffered vicarious trauma on 911 when they watched the Twin Towers fall. And so we might not be directly involved, but we may still be impacted by the effects of a traumatic experience. Then, of course, there's grief. When you lose a friend, when you lose a brother in arms, when someone is, you know, dies on the line of duty, or perhaps completes a suicide, or whatever that loss might be, there's grief that comes with that. And sometimes grief is compounded by trauma and other things. And then, of course, there is the moral injury and sanctuary trauma, when your core beliefs are challenged, or your core values are violated by the people that you expected would also uphold those values. There's often a moral injury. And sanctuary trauma occurs when you retreat to a place where you feel you should be safe, but then trauma occurs in that safe place. So we have all of these challenges. And yes, it is true that people in the general population can also experience these types of challenges. But when you have I think when you have that public facing aspect, it compounds things. You know, when you have the public constantly looking, constantly criticizing, constantly um, sort of making judgments about what you're doing, as well as the organization perhaps doing the same, right? Scrutinizing every move that you make, it compounds the stress. So when we look at this from an anger lens or through an anger lens, there's one thing I really want to clarify before we go too much further into this presentation, and that is, what is anger exactly? You know, for years when I was working in mental health and corrections, I would see people who were mandated by the courts, and they were mandated to come to anger management for all sorts of things, you know, vandalism, graffiti, drug possession, possession with the intent to distribute, domestic assault, all these different sorts of things, right? And the assumption was always, there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you. You need to go see somebody and get this fixed, right? Your anger is a problem and your anger needs fixing. And so when we look at the Gottman model of what anger really is, this is how they portray it. They say that anger is a mask for other emotions, for other things that are hidden under the surface. Okay. So they say that anger is what you see. And then there are all of these other emotions underneath. But here's the thing, anger is not what you do. I'm going to say that again. Anger is not what you do. Anger is what you feel. So my approach, or the anger solutions approach to this anger iceberg, as the Gottmans like to call it, is it's actually an iceberg of emotions. And what you see on the top is behavior. That's what you see. You see yelling, screaming, swearing, door slamming, erratic driving, indulging in too much alcohol, abusing drugs, getting into fights, domestic assault. That's what you see. That's the behavior. Okay. But here's the thing. You also see emotional withdrawal. I see silences, right? People refusing to interact or talk. You see anxiety, you see depression, you see the outward effects of that. Those are also reflections of anger, but that too is behavior. So whenever you see behavior and you assume you're looking at an angry person, your assumption might be wrong, because what you might be seeing is grief. You might be seeing frustration. You might be seeing the emotional effects of anxiety. You might be seeing fear, helplessness, self-doubt, feelings of betrayal. You might be seeing anger. You might be seeing disgust or contempt, right? So the behavior on the surface gives you a clue that something emotional is happening, but it doesn't necessarily define what that emotion is. Anger is just as valid as every other emotion. And it's true that sometimes we use angry behaviors to mask what we're truly feeling. But that doesn't mean that anger is behavior itself, right? Anger is an emotion. And if anger is an emotion, then why is it wrong, but happiness is not wrong? Why is it that fear in appropriate settings is not wrong, but anger is wrong? We can't judge anger when we look at it through the lens of just emotion, because you feel how you feel, right? And it's okay to feel how you feel. But it's not necessarily okay for you to go punch someone in the throat because you feel that way, right? So anger is what we feel. It is not what we do. And I noticed that when people are mandated, they're often getting the message that there's something wrong with them because they feel angry, right? And so they come into my practice and they have lots of shame, lots of remorse, lots of self-recrimination. And the first thing I say to them is, hey, you're not broken. You're not busted, okay? Anger is okay. We feel anger several times a day, just the same way we feel irritable or frustrated or happy or excited. We're going to experience that emotion on the regular. But where we need to apply our attention is, what are we doing to address the anger itself? So I want to share with you some of the key principles of anger solutions, and I live by this stuff. I don't always get it right, but I do live by it. And this is, this has been the thing that has helped me to overcome a lot of the challenges that I've experienced in my own life. And the first principle of anger solutions is that belief is the basis of action. What does this mean? What you believe determines how you behave, period. Right? What you believe will determine how you behave. And so if you believe that the law doesn't apply to you, right? There, people with antisocial personality disorder don't really care about the law. They don't believe that the law applies to them. And because they don't believe that the law applies to them, they are free to do whatever they like, whether it's legal or not. And they do so often without remorse, right? But if you believe that you should be a law-abiding citizen, then even if the law doesn't make sense to you, you're probably going to abide by it because belief is the basis of action, right? If I believe that the only way to get my kids to listen to me is to scream at them, then I'm going to scream at them. Actually, I'll probably scream at them whether I'm angry or not, because my end goal is to get them to listen, right? And if I believe that sincerely, then that's what I will do. And the only way I'm going to change my behavior is to change my belief, okay? So one of the things that we do in Anger Solutions is we challenge faulty beliefs. We pick our beliefs apart, and it's okay to do that from time to time, to look at the things that you're believing and to see, are these beliefs empowering me or are they limiting me, right? So I need to challenge them every so often to make sure that I'm still on the right track and that I'm living an empowered life and not a limited life. The other thing that we do, which I've already mentioned, is we address anger as an emotion. We do not confuse it with behavior, okay? So we always address anger as something that you feel, and we separate the behavior from the person, okay? We incorporate in the program a problem-solving paradigm, which I'm going to introduce to you here with this thought matrix in a second. But this problem-solving paradigm focuses on working towards a desired outcome rather than attempting to fix your feelings. Excuse me. What this means in reality is that we are looking at the underlying story of anger, which is anger is an emotion which comes up or it appears when your values, your rules, your expectations have been violated. Okay? So when your expectations are unmet, when your rules have been violated, when your values have been interfered with, that's when anger shows up. So what that means is there's a problem that sparked that emotion. And rather than trying to fix the emotion, we need to focus on solving the problem. Okay, so this problem-solving paradigm really helps us to focus on what we need to do to solve the problem in the immediate. And when we do that, the anger, the emotions often take care of themselves. The other thing that Anger Solutions does is it explores the aspects of trauma, grief, depression, and anxiety, and all of these other things, and how they intersect with anger. And so we address these things very gently, it's a very non-invasive way of addressing these peripheral issues. And sometimes they are central issues. But we explore them very gently throughout the program to show people how they intersect with their feelings of anger and help them make sense of it all so that they can do the problem solving that fits the challenge that they're currently facing. So let me show you this thought matrix. So if you start at the top with the yellow arrow, what we're saying here is that our thoughts inform our feelings. Okay, so if I have a thought, I'll give you a silly example. I'll use the driving one I always use. So I'm driving down the highway. I'm in the GTA. Traffic is crazy. Someone cuts me off. It's the fourth person who's cut me off since I've been on this stretch of road. And I think to myself, he did that on purpose. And because I think that he did it on purpose, one of my rules has been violated, that you should be respectful on the road. So now I'm angry, Okay. I'm feeling very angry. And I think to myself, this is the last time somebody's going to do me like that. So I chase them down. I run them off the road. I take the machete that I have conveniently, saved under the front seat of my car because I'm Jamaican, and hey, every Jamaican carries a machete. I'm being completely facetious right now. I hope you guys are laughing because that was a joke. But let's just say Julie's got a machete in her car. So I take the machete out and I slash all the tires and I say, that'll teach you. Okay, so I fixed my feeling. Now I feel a sense of retribution. I feel like I've been justified. Okay, I feel like I've gotten a little bit of my own back, except for when the police come to take me away and I say, well, that guy made me do it. That's not going to wash, right? It's not going to wash. So I need to do better than just try to fix my feelings in the moment, because trying to fix my feelings is not going to get me the outcome that I desire. But if we go one step back ahead of the orange arrow and we look at outcomes, if I am moving through my life constantly thinking about what is my desired outcome right now, I'm on the highway, the fourth person in a row cuts me off, and I think, you know what I really want is I want to get to my destination safely. That's what I want. I want to get to my destination without incident and want to get there in one piece. And so while I'm angry that people keep cutting me off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my behavior. Okay, so I'm making a choice now. So we're going purple and blue arrows. I'm making some choices based on my desired outcome, regardless of how I feel. Okay, so I'm going to choose to move over. Maybe I'll go into the slower lane. Maybe I'll get off this road because it's just too busy and I'll take an alternate route to where I'm going. I'm going to do things differently to ensure that I can get to where I need to go and get there in one piece. I'm going to take action in that regard, and then I'm going to get there safely. So I'm going to tell you, this actually happened to me in real life one time. And this was back in the day when I had signs on my car that had my face and, my name. And I can't remember everything they said, but it was like, Julie Christiansen, the anger lady, solutions for anger, blah, blah, blah. And it had my phone number. And I was on the 427 headed towards the airport. Actually, I wasn't headed to the airport. I was headed to Yorkdale. And a blue Mercedes, I won't forget it, a blue Mercedes with tinted windows cut me off. And I was just like, are you serious? I had that moment where I was like, oh, I'm gonna ride your tail. I'm gonna flash my lights. I'm gonna give you a hard time. And then I thought, okay, but if I do that, it's gonna put me at risk, because if I ride his tail and he slams on the brakes, now we're in an accident. It's gonna be my fault. So what do I really want? Well, I want to get to my destination. I was headed to a meeting. I want to get to my meeting. I want to be in a good frame of mind for this meeting. So I need to forget this guy. So I, as I passed by him, I gave him a wave and I kept on going, and I got to my destination, and I got there early. And while I was sitting there having a coffee, waiting for my colleague to meet with me, I got a text message on my phone. And the text message said, I'm sorry I cut you off this morning. Blue Mercedes, tinted windows. No lie. No lie. And I just texted back, thank you very much. And I thought, you know what, this stuff kind of works, doesn't it? Right? And it all comes down to deciding that I want to fix the problem rather than fixing my feelings. Because fixing my feelings feels good in the short term, but it doesn't feel good most of the time in the long term. So it gives me an immediate release, but then I don't get the desired outcome that I want. And by fixing my feelings, feeling good for a moment, feeling guilty later, I continue to feed that thought cycle that makes me feel angry, makes me feel guilty, makes me feel shame. I hope you can see how that works. So what we really want to do in every case is when we experience an event that is triggering for us and our thoughts start to take over, we really want to move forward to, what is it that I want? What's my desired outcome? What's the problem that needs solving here? And focus on that rather than trying to fix your feelings short term. So here's our approach to first responder anger. And this is something that I encourage all therapists and people who are working with first responders in a helping profession to do. Number one, we need to be respectful of your experience, okay, and the mindset that informs the choices to express or repress emotion. I know from all the years of working with first responders, whether RCMP, military, or with municipal police and OPP, that there is a different mindset that comes with working in a first responder job. It's a paramilitaristic structure, right? There's a paramilitary, oh gosh, I can't say the word, paramilitaristic hierarchy in all of these, whether it's fire, policing, emergency medical services, all of those have a similar structure, a similar hierarchy. There's a different mindset, okay, to go into that kind of job and to stay in that job over the long term. You have to adopt that mindset to a certain extent. We need to acknowledge the existing emotional intelligence skills that police officers have. All right. I have 3 children. One of my sons was just hired on with a municipal police force. And I look at my son and I acknowledge the high degree of emotional intelligence that he has. He's a bit of an introvert, so he's not out there, showing it off all the time. But I've seen him in crisis situations, and I've seen how he remains calm and he is gentle in his approach when he's dealing with certain types of crisis situations. He knows how to respond, when to respond. He knows when to call in the troops, because again, he just got hired, but he's been in situations where he's had to, call for emergency medical services and those sorts of things. And he manages those things, and he does it with a high degree of emotional intelligence. But I also understand that there are days when he wants to throat punch people, right? Like, we all have those moments. So this program is not set up with the intention or with the assumption that police officers lack emotional intelligence. We understand that police officers, for the most part, have a high level of emotional intelligence. That's what enables you to do your job, right? And so you need to leverage that EI within the context of how you resolve your anger. We also understand that for first responders, there are all sorts of problems, all sorts of issues, all sorts of events that you will not have the power to resolve. And this is true, excuse me, this is true as well for civilian members and family members who may also be watching or listening today. There are going to be all kinds of problems that first responders are unable to resolve. By extension, the civilian support workers, the family members, will also feel powerless to support their family members as they work through these problems. When there's a case that something foul has happened, but the people above you, the people who are making the decisions around whether or not these crimes should be investigated, say, there's no point. We're going to spend man hours and man hours and man hours investigating this. It's going to go before the courts, and the courts are going to throw it out because this circumstance. It's frustrating because it feels like justice isn't being done for the people who were harmed, right? That's a problem that you can't solve, right? It's a problem you can't solve. There are organizational problems that you can't solve. There are issues in terms of personality conflicts that you might not be able to solve. And so there has to be a way to resolve the emotions that come up with these frustrating situations, these impossible situations, so that you're not carrying the weight of that emotion with you all the time. And so we recognize that, and we incorporate some strategies to help you with that. So let me give you a quick overview of the Anger Solutions virtual program that was developed for Encompas. So this is self-directed virtual learning. You log in when you feel like it. You take as many modules as you feel like it, but I'll just break it down for you. So there are 8 modules. The first is all about mastering the art of definition, understanding what anger is, reviewing the myths and realities of anger, and learning a little bit about emotions and how those show up in your life. The second module focuses on identifying your anger style, figuring out what's your go-to, right? What's your default setting when you're feeling upset? Some people internalize, and that's why at the beginning I said, when you're thinking about behavior, we often think of anger as the yelling, the screaming, the physical aspects, the outbursts. But a lot of people turn inward as well. And so they may just withdraw into themselves. They may refuse to speak. They may have icy silences. They might do the passive aggressive thing where they smile to your face, but they're working behind your back to destroy you, right? So everybody has a different anger style. We talk about that, and helps you to become more self-aware of what it is that you are doing when you are expressing your anger. The third module looks at how anger develops and introduces that problem-solving theory or strategy that I was sharing. I'm having word finding problems today, y'all. I'm sorry. And the fourth is about assertiveness, verbal and nonverbal communication. And again, we understand that police officers are good at communication, right, when they're on the job. Sometimes that doesn't translate to good communication when you're not on the job. Let's just be real. And so we need to take some of those skills that we use in the workplace on the daily and apply them to other areas of our life in different relationships. The next component is about listening skills. And again, this is something that generally police officers are very skilled at. But we need to apply those skills again, as I say, with our intimate relationships with our friends and in different settings, right? We need to be able to apply those listening skills in all cases. And then we look at acceptance and forgiveness. This is a tough topic. It's a difficult one to address and to embrace, but it's important in the process of anger resolution. And then we look at releasing residual anger, and this comes last because we don't want people going to the gym and beating on a heavy bag without first trying to solve the problem, right? We do the problem solving first, we do the communication first, we do the acceptance and forgiveness first if we can, and then we move on to releasing that residual energy that's stuck inside of us. And then the last module is strictly a review of everything that we've learned. So some of the features of the program that we're super proud of, it's completely secure. Your identity is kept confidential. So you can set it up so that no one knows that you're taking the program. You just go in, you log into a secure system, and you can be reassured that this isn't going to end up on your record somewhere or in your HR file that you took this course. It's completely confidential. We have lots of videos and active links, and I'll talk a little bit more about the videos as we move forward. But in every module, we start out with an introductory video for me, just telling you what you're going to learn and the things that I want you to keep an eye out for. There's lots of self-work exercises, reflection exercises, and extension exercises. We also engaged the former chief of police of Belleville, Ron Janak, who retired in 2020, I believe. We engaged him to also participate in the video section. And I probably spent about an hour and a half online with Ron. I've known Ron since I was 15 years old. And so, throughout his entire career, starting off with the Army, with peacekeeping forces, he was part of the airborne regiment that went into Iraq and Desert Storm, and then he came home and was on the OPP for several years before going into municipal policing and ending up at Belleville, where he finished out his career as chief of police. So Ron has, a lifetime, literally, of experience as a first responder, and he just shared so many insights. We're really grateful to him for doing that. And so you're going to see snippets of my conversation with Ron throughout the various modules as well. And so you can get insight from someone who's been there in the trenches, as opposed to just hearing from me, who's, despite all the work that I've done with first responders, I'm still an outsider. But hearing from someone who has been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, got the badges, right, and happily retired from that work, I think that's a huge asset to this program. And finally, we have some opportunities to integrate that self-directed learning into counseling or therapy sessions moving forward. So the module format, in every module, you're going to see the same sort of basic template. It starts out with some sort of a quote that is relevant to the module that you're working through. You'll get that introductory video from me telling you what to expect as you go through. And then I use something called the ropes method for delivery. So we always review what you learned in the previous module. I give you an overview of what's going to happen in the module that you're in. You'll get the presentation. So, and typically in the presentation, there are 3 parts, maybe 4. For each part that you learn, there's going to be some sort of an exercise or an example, a video link to check, an audio file, something. There's going to be something that you can interact with within that module, and to solidify the learning that you've taken away from that module. And then we summarize it. And then at the end of every module, there's an extension activity. And the extension activity is really for people who want to fully immerse themselves in this program so that you can get the most value out of it. So here are some examples, screenshots. I was hoping to bring you guys some actual video today, but we are in transition with all of our tech, new computers, and stuff is on backup drives, and I tried to get them downloaded to Dropbox so I could get them in here, and the files are really big, so I couldn't do it. But in its place, I've got you some screenshots here. So this is module 4, the assertiveness module. And this is one of the activities, and this is just a review. So here it's saying that you're going to see 4 video clips, each one representing different behavior styles. You're going to, the aggressive, assertive, passive, or passive aggressive. Those are the 4 behavior styles that we're talking about. You're going to see a video clip for each of those. And then there's some exercises, some questions for you to answer to help you solidify the learning there. So we have activities like this in each module. Here we're in step 3. This is understanding how anger develops. There are opportunities for self-reflection. And so you get to go through and just review what you learned in the previous module and make those connections so that you can see how what you learned last time is linking in with what you're learning today. We have recurring themes. And so that thought matrix that I showed you earlier shows up in this program several times, actually. And we keep referring back to it because as we work through, we start talking about myths and realities of anger. That's part of your thought process. And then we talk about emotions and emotional states and how you express those emotions. That's your feeling part. Then when we get into how anger develops and assertiveness, we're talking now about your choices and your actions that are going to determine the outcomes that you get. And so we continue to bring the thought matrix forward to connect it to the different aspects of the Anger Solutions program that you're learning. All right, and there is my good friend Ranjana. Unfortunately, I don't think this video actually works. No, it does not. Yeah, but we do have videos featuring Ron and his perspective on some key topics. And I mean, we talked about all sorts of things. We talk about the energy of work. We talk about the fact that going to work, as a first responder is very much like a medieval soldier putting on a suit of armor and going to battle. And he talks about how difficult it is to take that armor off at the end of the day and to transition into the other parts of who you are. We talk about trauma. We talk about all the various aspects of trauma. He talks very candidly about the challenges of dealing with public perception of police officers and the challenges that police officers face as they go out every day to do their jobs, and they're getting clapback from the public when they're doing their very best to serve and protect. So there are lots of different things that we talked about in our conversation, and we chopped that video up into 2 to 5 minute chunks, and we put as many pieces of that conversation into the program so that you could hear his perspective and get some of his wisdom and his feedback on these different things, and that adds real value to the program. All right, that is as far as my formal presentation. That's an overview of the Anger Solutions program. And of course, if anyone has questions beyond today, you can reach out to me through Encompas, of course, or through my website, angersolution.com. And I'm happy to take any questions that may have come up throughout the presentation. So please, let's have them.
All right, Julie, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. It's so helpful to have a framework for understanding really how we as people deal with difficult situations, and then really to have some strategies and skills that are very practical that you can use every day in the moment. And so I really, really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. Are there any questions from anyone that's listening? I actually did have a question about the course itself, Julie. Can you give us an idea of how long each of the modules take?
Each of the modules, I mean, it depends on a couple of things. It depends on your reading speed, I guess, for starters, because we tried to not overwhelm it with too much text content, but there is a certain amount of theory that you have to learn in order to make this work. So I would expect that each module would take about an hour to complete, perhaps a little longer if you're going to do the extension activities and take it through. If you're going to do the homework between modules, it's, your investment is a little bit more, but it's about an hour each module.
Right, great. So, I mean, this is a great alternative or a companion for people that are struggling with how to deal with anger. And let's face it, I mean, we all don't have good models or ways of dealing with anger. And, I so appreciate that your comments around the very difficult situations that first responders have to essentially stuff down and kind of put aside. And so this is a nice self-directed, self-paced way to be able to get some learning and really deep learning, right? This is not a done in 30 minutes. This is a really exceptional course that can give people some great skills.
Yeah, it was really important to us as we were developing the program that they got as much value as possible out of each module. I'm a therapist, and so when I'm working with a client in session, we're conversing and we're talking and I'm teaching and they're learning, and there's a whole bunch of dynamic stuff happening in the therapy room. I wanted people to get a sense of that. If I'm not present there with you, then I want you to still feel the dynamic action of the program, right? Hence the video links and the different ways of learning, right? And I understand too that not everybody learns the same way.
Right.
Some people are auditory learners and they need to listen to stuff, and they don't want to read a whole bunch of text. They want an audiobook, right? And then you have other people who are kinesthetic learners who need to be hands-on and need to be doing something. And then of course you have your visual learners who like pictures and like to read text. So we wanted to make sure that all those different learning styles were accommodated in the program as well. So if you're not big on reading a whole bunch of content, you can skim it and still get the core ideas, but then you can do the exercises and you're still going to have stuff that you take away.
Right. And I think it's great that whether it's you're doing this kind of in a preventative way, maybe you're new to to your role. This gives you some great tools from a prevention perspective to have at your disposal, or as a way of processing. You're really dealing with some difficult emotions, and you need some strategies for coping with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do have a couple questions here about. One of them is if you have some suggestions for how a police officer or anybody really who is working in a situation and they have intense feelings of anger toward the organization for maybe not having their back. How do you how do you process, kind of the intensity of that kind of
Yes.
anger?
Yeah, this is a tough one. This goes back to what I said at the beginning, that, there are some problems that we can't solve, right? And this is one of them. This is one of those situations where you can't control what is happening at an organizational level. And so when you have that feeling that you are helpless, that you don't have control, a lot of anger can spring up from that. And I think the key thing is, again, I'm gonna beat this horse to death with a stick, and that is, what is your desired outcome? Is it that the organization have your back? Because you may never get that, right? That's something that's outside of your control. If you make a list of all the things that you can control and all the things that you can't control, in the column under control, you're going to find I can control what I say, what I do, how I react, how I respond, how I deal with my angry feelings. Those are all the things I can control. I can't control any of this other stuff. And so when you're looking at what's my desired outcome, you really have to ask yourself, what is the thing that I need for me? If this organization doesn't have my back, what do I have left in terms of choices? What do I have that I can control? Do I want to perhaps move into a different, work for a different police organization? Do I want to go to municipal? Do I still want to be a police officer? If I do still want to be a police officer, can I be okay with the fact that I have supports, just not from the places where I thought I would have them, right? Can I find support in other places? And then the anger itself, this is where forgiveness and acceptance comes in. It's really handy, because you might not necessarily be able to forgive the organization for not having your back, especially if they say that they will. Okay, and this is for any work environment, right? Like, I've worked in places where I knew they did not have my back at all, and it was my decision if I was going to stay there or if I was going to go. But I understood that I do have supports, and if I don't feel like I have a lot of supports, can I go out and I find some? Can I find supports? Can I find my tribe of people who will have my back, not necessarily organizationally, but emotionally, right? Are there people out there who will give me the moral support that I need so that I can continue to do my job and excel in that job, right? And then by achieving that measure of acceptance and saying, okay, this organization is flawed, right? It's flawed. Parents are flawed. Like, as a parent, we're never doing parenting until we're doing it. So we don't have any experience, right? And the organization might be different, because the organization might have lots of experience, but the organization may also be stuck in a rut of doing things the way they've always done them. And they don't have any idea of how to do it differently. So they may just be as flawed as a parent might be flawed, in that they're doing the best they can with what they have at the time, right? And so having that empathy, if I can use that word, to say, well, the organization is flawed. The people within the organization are flawed. People are going to make mistakes. And it's true, I don't feel like they have my back, but maybe they're doing the best that they can with the resources they have, right? Acceptance allows you to let that angry energy go. And then once you've worked through that process, or as you're working through that process, it's probably good to hit the gym. And hit a heavy bag every now and then, right? To get that energy out of your body, because that energy staying inside you isn't hurting the organization.
Right.
It's hurting you.
Right. And there's a field of it around you as well,
yes.
right? In terms
of
like,
you're the one that suffers the most from carrying that anger with you. So it's in your best interest to find a way to resolve it, whether the organization changes or not, right? It's in your best interest to fix that for yourself.
Thank you. This is an interesting question. Is there such a thing as addictive anger, would you say?
This is a good question. I was actually having a conversation with a client last night, and we were talking about some of the ways that he was responding with his anger. And he said, it used to feel good. And I think that's where the addictive piece comes in, because when you feel helpless, when you feel out of control, like out of control of your circumstances, when you feel like the only way that you can regain control is through anger, I don't want to say anger, aggression, right? Through aggressive behaviors, by being belligerent or being manipulative or whatever it might be, and you get what you want, it's reinforcing, right? The same way that avoidance is reinforcing for anxiety. If you're feeling anxious about going somewhere and you say, well, I'm not going to go, then your anxiety goes away and it's reinforcing of your avoidance, right? And anger can be the same way, that if you respond in aggressive ways and it feels good because you're getting what you want, it's reinforcing.
Right.
And it may teach you the lesson that I can get what I want by being this way, right? So I don't, sorry?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, Jane.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say that it's addictive, but I would certainly say it's reinforcing.
Right.
Right? If you're expressing your anger in inappropriate ways, but those inappropriate ways get you results, then
right.
Yeah, you're going to want to do it again.
Yeah.
So again, the question is, what's your long-term outcome? One of the things that I think is in the program is a choice matrix, and the choice matrix looks at the different kinds of choices. You know, we can make a right choice, we can make a wrong choice. And depending on the choice, we can have short-term gain or short-term pain, or we can have long-term gain or long-term pain. And what happens when you do the feelings fixing kind of behaviors is that you get short-term gain, but you get long-term pain.
Right.
Right. So it feels good in the moment, but now you feel guilty and you feel shame. And you know, your self-esteem suffers because you don't feel good about yourself. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just talked to my kids that way, or my wife, or whoever, right? And then you suffer that over the long term. And it doesn't really get you the outcomes you want. So when you think about, you know, making the right choice for the right reasons at the right time, you know, then you can see that you have short-term gain and you have long-term gain, which is what you're really aiming for.
Right. Thank you. My interruption was going to be, but then you're not getting that outcome that you're ultimately going to get, right? Yes. Yeah. So thank you.
Okay, so
do you have a question around where people can find your course?
I wonder if Jen can answer that question, or perhaps you can.
Yeah, I can too. I think it's on the member portal. So there's the Encompas website, but you need to be invited to the member portal to access the resources library. And the way that you can be invited to the member portal is reaching out to the care management team, the Encompas care management team, or right through the website itself. But that's why it's kind of one level deeper into the website on that secure portal. So as Julie had mentioned, there's no way that anybody can see that you've accessed this course. So that's why it's a little bit deeper. And please reach out to us if you're having any trouble finding it, and we'll be happy to help with that. Any other questions? Julie, any last thoughts that you have?
I think if I can leave you with anything, I would say sometimes doing this work feels really daunting. And sometimes it feels like it's not worth it to do the work around anger, because anger is a powerful emotion and it's a motivating emotion. Anger gives you energy to do things that you might not necessarily have the energy to do otherwise. And so it may feel a little bit threatening to say, yeah, I'm going to go do this anger course, I'm going to do this work, but then how will I get through my day if I don't have this fire inside me that pushes me through to do my job? So what I would say is that this is not about taking away your fire. This is about giving you power over your fire.
I like that.
So I would encourage you, honestly. I mean, I understand the range of stressors that that officers and civilian members go through on the daily. And I also understand how hard it is to carry the weight of that, you know, even through a single shift, how difficult it can be to carry the weight of the things that you see and not have an outlet to release that pain and the stuff that you're seeing and that you're being a part of. So yeah, I mean, I know I wrote it, and so I'm biased in that regard, but I really believe in this work, and
yeah.
I do, and I live by it. So I know that it works. I know that it makes a difference. And so if you're looking for ways to control that heat, that fire, that energy, so that you can get through your days and still be everything that you want to be in all the aspects of your life, with your family, with your friends, and sports, and all the other things that you do outside of policing, then I encourage you to check it out.
Okay, thank you. We did have another question come in here. We still have 5 minutes left.
Sure.
So I hope you don't mind. But the
Sure.
question was, do you have any guidance for a spouse who sees their partner struggling with anger? How to really kind of broach, that conversation with them about doing something about it?
That's a difficult one, because as from a standpoint of a therapist, when I approach my spouse about things, I have to be very careful, because he's, his go-to is always, don't psychoanalyze me. Don't analyze me. It's like, I'm not analyzing you. I'm just, making an observation. So I think that there are a couple of things that you can do. If you are in the middle of an outburst, right? If you're in the middle of witnessing an outburst, I would stay silent and just let it happen, because very often people just need to be heard. They just need to be heard. And if we interrupt and we say things like, "Don't yell at me, stop," we try to intervene, but we are also escalating. Then what happens is they will escalate one step higher, right? And as we try to escalate to calm them down, we're actually taking them up another level. So sometimes the best thing that you can do is just stand back and let what needs to be said, and then afterwards, when your partner is calm, can we talk about that? Right? Like, instead of trying to intervene in the heat of the moment, let things come down, and let's talk about that, because that you really scared me right then. And I know that's not what you intended to do, but that's how I felt, right? And then we can have an honest, open, empathetic conversation. I think we need to approach this from a place of compassion and empathy and understanding that we don't understand.
That iceberg, right?
Yes.
The iceberg.
Yeah. Like, what's really going on here? Because I know that that's not you. That's evidence of something else that's going on. So can we talk about that? And if you don't want to talk to me about it, that's okay. But I'd like you to talk to somebody. Right. Like we have to exercise those assertiveness skills too. But again, it's important that we do so with compassion and with empathy, rather than being accusing or blaming or laying out ultimatums or all those sorts of things. Because when someone's feeling angry, they're already in fight or flight. And if we start coming at them, it's going to increase anxiety. It's going to increase that fight or flight response. And they're going to respond in a way that's looking to fix their feelings, as opposed to moving towards desired outcome, because they're past the point of hearing you. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing we often forget, is that when people are really, really angry, when they're sort of, past the red line, they're not hearing anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you say. They're not hearing you. And so there's no point in speaking at that time. You have to wait until they come back to their baseline, where they're open to having a conversation, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I'd add one more thing to that. And that is that often when people come down after an outburst, there's a lot of shame there. And they may not feel like they're worthy of a conversation. And so a little validation, and I'm not saying that you need to sacrifice your own self, your needs for this, but a little bit of validation to say, you know what, I didn't like what just happened, but I still love you. And I really want to be here for you. Like, just something like that. might be enough to help them to see that you're not ashamed of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, good point.
And so you're open to that conversation, and perhaps that will draw them in.
Good. Thank you. That was excellent. Awesome. And a great question. So thank you. We are at 11 o'clock. Julie, again, I want to thank you so much for your expertise, for your understanding of, kind of for your work in customizing this course really for the unique circumstances with first responders. So thank you so much. If anybody is having any difficulty finding the course on the website, please reach out to us. The portal resources library has a lot of wonderful resources there that you might find helpful. And we will be posting this on the website, so you can always go back and revisit it. And I just want to remind everybody that our next session is Wednesday, October 27th at 10 o'clock. And we will be soon getting out the promotional pieces for that. But thank you again, Julie. I so appreciate you sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be with you today.
And thank you everybody on the line for coming. Thank you.